Welcome to the History AI podcast, where the past comes alive with facts, anecdotes, and a dash of humor. Here are your hosts, Chuck and Marco.
Welcome back, history buffs, to another episode of the History AI podcast. I'm Chuck.
And I'm Marco. Today, we've got a thrilling episode for you as we dive into the Battle of the Coral Sea. This clash of titans took place during World War II and marked a significant turning point in the Pacific theater.
Absolutely, Marco. But before we get into the thick of it, let's set the scene for our listeners. The year is 1942, the world is engulfed in the chaos of World War II, and the Pacific is about to witness a naval battle like never before.
And Chuck, I think it's worth mentioning that you and I have a personal connection to a ship named after one of the ships involved in this battle. We've both been to the Lexington Museum on North Beach several times. It's an incredible experience to walk the decks of a ship with such a storied history.
That's right, Marco. The museum is housed in the USS Lexington, CV-16, which was named in honor of the original USS Lexington, CV-2, that was lost during the Battle of the Coral Sea. The name Lexington comes from the Battle of Lexington and Concord, the first military engagements of the American Revolutionary War, symbolizing resilience and a fighting spirit.
Visiting the Lexington Museum really brings history to life. It's a tangible connection to the past and a great way to honor the bravery and sacrifices of those who served on both the original Lexington and its successor. If any of our listeners have the chance, we highly recommend a visit.
Absolutely. And now, with that bit of personal history, let's dive into the details of the Battle of the Coral Sea. To understand its significance, we need to start with what was happening in the broader context of World War II in early 1942. The war had been raging for over 2 years, with Axis powers making significant advances in Europe, North Africa, and Asia. The Pacific theater, however, had become a critical battleground following Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941.
That attack crippled the U.S. Pacific Fleet and brought America into the war. In the months following Pearl Harbor, Japan launched a series of rapid and successful offensives. They seized Guam, Wake Island, the Philippines, and large parts of Southeast Asia, including Hong Kong, Malaya, and Singapore. The Japanese advance seemed unstoppable.
Japan's strategy was to create a defensive perimeter that would protect their newly acquired empire and prevent the Allies from striking back. This involved capturing key locations across the Pacific, which would serve as strongholds and provide bases for further expansion. One of their main targets was Port Moresby in New Guinea. Capturing Port Moresby would put northern Australia within range of Japanese aircraft, threatening Allied supply lines and communications.
The Allies, especially the United States and Australia, recognized the strategic importance of Port Moresby. Losing it would have been a disaster, making Australia vulnerable and disrupting plans to mount a counter-offensive in the Pacific. The stage was set for a crucial confrontation.
By April 1942, the Japanese had formulated Operation MO, their plan to invade and capture Port Moresby. They also aimed to establish a seaplane base at Tulagi in the Solomon Islands, which would enhance their ability to conduct reconnaissance and support their naval operations in the Coral Sea.
Meanwhile, American codebreakers had managed to intercept and decipher Japanese communications, giving the Allies crucial intelligence about Japan's plans. Armed with this information, Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, the commander-in-chief of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, devised a strategy to counter the Japanese offensive.
Nimitz ordered Rear Admiral Frank J. Fletcher to take command of Task Force 17, which included the aircraft carriers USS Lexington and USS Yorktown. Their mission was to intercept and thwart the Japanese invasion force before it could reach Port Moresby.
As the opposing fleets moved into position, tensions were high. Both sides knew the stakes were enormous. The Battle of the Coral Sea was about to begin, and it would be a pivotal moment in the Pacific War, marking the first time in history that a naval battle was fought entirely by aircraft, without the opposing ships ever coming within sight of each other.
Now that we've set the stage, let's dive into the forces involved in the Battle of the Coral Sea. This was a clash between some of the most powerful naval and air units of the time, and the stakes were incredibly high.
On the Japanese side, Vice Admiral Shigeyoshi Inoue commanded the Fourth Fleet. His forces included a formidable array of ships and aircraft. The main strike force was the covering force, led by Rear Admiral Takeo Takagi, which consisted of the aircraft carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku. These two carriers were among the most advanced in the Japanese fleet, each carrying over 80 aircraft, including the feared Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters, Nakajima B-5N torpedo bombers, and HED-3A dive bombers.
Additionally, the Japanese had the screening force under Rear Admiral Kyohide Shima, which included the light carrier Shoho, for heavy cruisers, and several destroyers. These ships were tasked with providing support and protection for the main invasion force, which included transports carrying troops destined for Port Moresby.
On the Allied side, Rear Admiral Frank J. Fletcher commanded Task Force 17. This force included the aircraft carriers USS Lexington and USS Yorktown. The Lexington, known as Lady Lex, was one of the largest and most powerful carriers in the U.S. Navy, carrying a mix of F-4F Wildcat fighters, SBD Dauntless dive bombers, and TBD Devastator torpedo bombers. The Yorktown, nicknamed the Fighting Lady, had a similar complement of aircraft and was equally formidable.
Task Force 17 also included a strong escort of cruisers and destroyers, designed to protect the carriers from surface and submarine threats. Notable ships in this group included the heavy cruisers USS Astoria, USS Chester, and USS Portland, as well as several destroyers like USS Hammond and USS Perkins. These ships formed the backbone of Fletcher's force, providing anti-aircraft defense and offensive firepower.
The air groups on both sides were filled with experienced and highly skilled pilots. The Japanese aviators had honed their skills in the early stages of the war, gaining valuable combat experience in China and during the initial Pacific campaigns. Pilots like Lieutenant Commander Shigeru Murata, who led the torpedo bombers from the Shokaku, were renowned for their precision and bravery.
On the Allied side, the pilots were a mix of seasoned veterans and eager newcomers. Lieutenant Commander Robert E. Dixon, leading the dive bombers from the USS Lexington, was one of the standout figures. His cool-headed leadership and combat prowess would prove crucial in the upcoming battles.
The leadership on both sides was also critical. Vice Admiral Inoue was a cautious and strategic thinker, focused on achieving Japan's objectives with minimal risk. Rear Admiral Takagi, on the other hand, was aggressive and bold, known for his willingness to engage the enemy directly.
Admiral Fletcher, leading the U.S. forces, was a steady and experienced commander. He had previously seen action in the Pacific and understood the importance of carrier warfare. His second-in-command, Rear Admiral Aubrey Fitch, was equally competent, having commanded carrier operations in the early months of the war.
As these formidable forces moved into position in the Coral Sea, both sides knew that the outcome of this battle could significantly influence the direction of the war in the Pacific. The stage was set for a dramatic and unprecedented clash, where the skill, strategy, and courage of each side's forces would be put to the ultimate test.
The Battle of the Coral Sea unfolded over several tense and dramatic days in early May 1942. Let's break it down day by day to get a full picture of how this historic battle played out.
On May 3, the Japanese began their operation by landing troops on Tulagi in the Solomon Islands. They aimed to establish a seaplane base that would support their operations in the Coral Sea. However, the Americans were already aware of these plans, thanks to their code breakers.
The next day, May 4th, saw the first major Allied action. Task Force 17, under Rear Admiral Fletcher, launched airstrikes from the USS Yorktown against the Japanese forces at Tulagi. This surprise attack resulted in the destruction of several Japanese seaplanes and support vessels, disrupting their plans and boosting Allied morale.
The main phase of the battle began on May 7th. Both sides were now aware of each other's presence in the Coral Sea and were preparing for a major engagement. Early that morning, Japanese scout planes mistakenly identified a group of American ships as a carrier task force. This led to a significant airstrike against the American oiler USS Neosha and the destroyer USS Sims. The Sims was sunk, and the Neosha was heavily damaged and left adrift.
Meanwhile, the Americans also launched a major strike, targeting what they believed to be the main Japanese carrier force. Instead, they found and attacked the light carrier Shoho. The attack was devastating, with American dive bombers and torpedo planes from both the USS Lexington and USS Yorktown scoring multiple direct hits, sinking the Shoho. This led to the famous radio message from Lieutenant Commander Robert E. Dixon, "Scratch one flat top."
May 8th was the climactic day of the battle. Both sides launched their full air complements in an all-out effort to disable the enemy's carriers. Early that morning, American scout planes located the Japanese carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku. In response, Admiral Fletcher ordered an immediate strike.
The American air attack on Shokaku was intense. Dive bombers from the Yorktown and Lexington managed to score several direct hits, causing severe damage to the carrier and forcing it to withdraw from the battle. Zuikaku, however, managed to evade detection due to poor weather conditions and remained largely unscathed.
At the same time, the Japanese launched their own strike against the American carriers. The USS Lexington was hit by multiple bombs and torpedoes, causing catastrophic damage. Despite valiant efforts by her crew to save her, the damage was too severe, and she was eventually abandoned and scuttled. The Yorktown was also hit but managed to continue operations despite significant damage.
The losses on May 8th were significant for both sides. The Japanese had lost the light carrier Shoho and had Shokaku heavily damaged, while the Americans lost the USS Lexington. The Yorktown's survival, though damaged, was crucial for the upcoming battles in the Pacific.
Throughout these intense days, there were numerous acts of heroism. For instance, Lieutenant Commander Robert E. Dixon's leadership and precision in the air strikes on Shoho were pivotal. On the Japanese side, the pilots of Shokaku and Zuikaku, despite suffering heavy losses, showed remarkable skill and bravery.
The tactics used in this battle were revolutionary. It was the first time in naval history that a battle was fought entirely by aircraft from carriers. The ships of the opposing fleets never sighted each other, marking a significant shift in naval warfare tactics.
By the end of May 8th, both sides were forced to withdraw. The Japanese invasion of Port Moresby had been thwarted, marking the first strategic victory for the Allies in the Pacific. However, the cost had been high, and both navies needed time to recover and regroup.
The Battle of the Coral Sea was a pivotal moment in the Pacific War. It showed the importance of aircraft carriers and air superiority, setting the stage for future battles. It also marked a shift in momentum, as the Allies began to mount a more effective resistance against Japanese expansion.
This battle, while costly, provided crucial lessons and set the stage for the Battle of Midway, which would further tilt the balance in favor of the Allies. We'll cover that in detail in a future episode. For now, let's take a moment to appreciate the bravery and sacrifice of all those involved in the Battle of the Coral Sea.
The Battle of the Coral Sea wasn't just a clash of ships and planes, it was a testament to the courage and ingenuity of the individuals involved. Let's delve deeper into the heroes and the tactics that defined this historic engagement.
One of the standout figures on the American side was Lieutenant Commander Robert E. Dixon. On May 7th, Dixon led a squadron of Douglas SBD Dauntless dive bombers from the USS Lexington in a daring attack on the Japanese light carrier Shoho. His precision and leadership were instrumental in the successful sinking of the Shoho. Dixon's radio message, "Scratch one flat top," became legendary and boosted Allied morale.
Another key American figure was Lieutenant Commander John L. Nielsen, also from the USS Lexington. Nielsen led torpedo bombers and coordinated strikes against the Japanese fleet. His effective coordination with dive bombers and fighters maximized the damage inflicted on the enemy. Despite facing intense anti-aircraft fire and enemy fighters, Nielsen's squadron delivered critical blows to the Japanese carriers.
On the Japanese side, Vice Admiral Tokeo Tokogi and Rear Admiral Chuichi Hara commanded the carrier task force. Tokogi, an experienced naval officer, was known for his aggressive tactics. He and Hara coordinated the strikes from Shokaku and Zuikaku, showcasing their strategic acumen and the skill of their pilots.
One of the unsung heroes of the battle was Petty Officer Saburo Shindo, a Zero fighter pilot from the Shokaku. Shindo displayed remarkable skill and bravery, defending his carrier against relentless American attacks. His efforts, along with those of his fellow pilots, helped protect Shokaku from complete destruction, even as it suffered heavy damage.
The tactics employed during the Battle of the Coral Sea were groundbreaking. For the first time in naval history, the battle was fought entirely by aircraft, without the opposing ships ever coming into direct sight of each other. This marked a significant shift in naval warfare, emphasizing the strategic importance of aircraft carriers and air superiority.
The American tactic of using scout planes for reconnaissance played a crucial role. Early detection of enemy forces allowed the U.S. Navy to launch preemptive strikes. For instance, on May 4, reconnaissance planes from the Yorktown spotted Japanese forces at Tulagi, leading to a successful surprise attack that disrupted Japanese plans.
Coordination between different types of aircraft was also key. Dive bombers, torpedo bombers, and fighters had to work in unison to maximize their effectiveness. Dive bombers, like the SBD Dauntless, attacked from above, delivering precise bomb strikes, while torpedo bombers, such as the TBD Devastator, attacked from lower altitudes, aiming to cripple ships with torpedoes.
The Japanese, known for their disciplined and skilled pilots, utilized a combination of Zero fighters for air superiority and bombers for offensive strikes. The Mitsubishi A6M0, with its exceptional maneuverability and range, provided effective cover for the bombers, allowing them to penetrate American defenses.
Another critical tactic was damage control. The ability to manage and mitigate damage during the heat of battle was vital. The crew of the USS Lexington, despite facing catastrophic damage from bombs and torpedoes, fought valiantly to save their ship. Firefighting teams and repair crews worked tirelessly to contain fires and keep the ship afloat for as long as possible.
However, the Japanese also demonstrated impressive damage control capabilities. Despite being heavily damaged, the Shokaku's crew managed to keep the carrier afloat and eventually retreat. This resilience allowed Shokaku to be repaired and return to action in later battles.
The Battle of the Coral Sea showcased the importance of intelligence, coordination, and adaptability. Both sides learned valuable lessons that would influence future engagements. For the Allies, the battle underscored the need for improved carrier tactics and better aircraft coordination, lessons that would prove crucial in the Battle of Midway.
The bravery and heroism displayed by the individuals involved left a lasting legacy. Their actions not only shaped the outcome of the battle but also inspired future generations of naval aviators and sailors. The Battle of the Coral Sea was a testament to the human spirit, innovation, and the relentless pursuit of victory in the face of adversity.
In terms of casualties, the battle was costly for both sides. The Americans suffered the loss of the USS Lexington and the destroyer USS Sims, along with significant damage to the Yorktown. Approximately 543 American sailors and airmen lost their lives. The Japanese losses included the light carrier Shoho, several smaller ships, and severe damage to the Shokaku. The Japanese also lost around 1,074 men, including many experienced pilots and aircrew, which was a critical blow to their naval aviation capabilities.
The Battle of the Coral Sea marked a turning point in the Pacific War for several reasons. Strategically, it was the first time that a major Japanese advance had been halted. The failure to capture Port Moresby denied Japan a critical base of operations from which they could threaten Australia and disrupt Allied supply lines.
The battle also demonstrated the evolving nature of naval warfare. It was the first naval battle in history fought entirely by aircraft from carriers, with neither fleet ships coming into direct contact with the enemy. This shift underscored the importance of air power in naval strategy and set the stage for future carrier-based engagements.
Furthermore, the damage inflicted on the Japanese carrier Shokaku and Zuikaku had long-term implications. Shokaku required extensive repairs and was unavailable for the Battle of Midway. Zuikaku, though operational, had lost many of its seasoned pilots and aircraft, reducing its effectiveness in future battles. This loss of experienced aviators would significantly impact Japan's carrier strike capabilities.
The Battle of the Coral Sea also provided the Allies with valuable lessons in carrier warfare. The importance of coordination between different types of aircraft, effective reconnaissance, and rapid damage control became clear. These lessons would be crucial in the Battle of Midway, where the U.S. Navy achieved a decisive victory that turned the tide of the war in the Pacific.
While the Battle of the Coral Sea was costly for both sides, it marked the beginning of a strategic shift in favor of the Allies. It halted the Japanese expansion and set the stage for future successes. The bravery and sacrifice of those who fought in this battle left an enduring legacy and helped shape the outcome of World War II in the Pacific. The Battle of the Coral Sea was more than just a pivotal confrontation in the Pacific theater, it was a momentous event that had far-reaching consequences for the course of World War II and beyond. Let's delve into its lasting impact.
First and foremost, the Battle of the Coral Sea marked the first significant check on Japanese expansion. Until this battle, Japan had enjoyed an almost unbroken string of victories across the Pacific and Southeast Asia. Their strategic objective of capturing Port Moresby was thwarted, which had profound implications for the Allies' defensive strategy. By denying Japan this crucial base, the Allies prevented Japan from threatening Australia and disrupting Allied supply lines in the South Pacific.
This victory, while not decisive in terms of ships sunk, was a major morale booster for the Allied forces. It demonstrated that the Japanese Navy was not invincible and that Allied naval and air power could effectively counter Japanese advances. This psychological shift was crucial in galvanizing Allied forces and bolstering the resolve of both military personnel and civilians.
The battle also underscored the strategic importance of aircraft carriers and air superiority in naval warfare. The Coral Sea engagement was the first naval battle in history where opposing ships never sighted each other, with the conflict being decided entirely by aircraft. This shift highlighted the diminishing role of traditional battleships and the rising prominence of carriers as the dominant force in naval warfare.
The lessons learned from the Battle of the Coral Sea were instrumental in shaping subsequent Allied strategies. For instance, the coordination between dive bombers, torpedo bombers, and fighters proved to be a decisive factor in the battle. The experience gained in coordinating large-scale air operations and managing carrier task forces directly influenced the tactics used in the Battle of Midway, which occurred just a month later.
Speaking of Midway, the damage inflicted on the Japanese carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku during the Coral Sea battle had direct repercussions. Shokaku required extensive repairs and was unable to participate in the Battle of Midway. Zuikaku, although operational, had lost many of its experienced pilots and aircraft, reducing its effectiveness. This weakened state of the Japanese carrier force contributed to the decisive American victory at Midway, which marked a turning point in the Pacific War.
The Battle of the Coral Sea also had long-term implications for naval aviation development. The reliance on aircraft carriers necessitated advancements in carrier design, aircraft technology, and pilot training. The success of carrier-based operations led to increased investment in these areas, shaping the future of naval warfare.
Additionally, the battle reinforced the importance of intelligence and code-breaking in modern warfare. The success of the American forces in intercepting and deciphering Japanese communications was a critical factor in their ability to anticipate and counter Japanese moves. This highlighted the need for robust intelligence gathering and analysis capabilities, which continued to play a vital role throughout the war.
The legacy of the Battle of the Coral Sea extends beyond World War II. It set a precedent for the use of air power in naval conflicts and influenced post-war naval strategies and doctrines. The concept of carrier strike groups, which became the cornerstone of modern naval operations, can trace its roots back to the lessons learned during this battle.
The battle also serves as a testament to the bravery and resilience of the individuals who fought in it. The heroism displayed by pilots, sailors, and commanders on both sides continues to be remembered and honored. Their actions not only shaped the outcome of the battle but also left a lasting legacy of courage and sacrifice.
The Battle of the Coral Sea was a turning point in the Pacific War with lasting impacts that extended far beyond the immediate aftermath. It halted Japanese expansion, showcased the strategic importance of aircraft carriers, influenced future naval tactics and technology, and underscored the critical role of intelligence in warfare. The lessons learned and the bravery displayed during this battle continue to resonate in the annals of military history. We hope you enjoyed this dive into the Battle of the Coral Sea. It was a pivotal moment in history with far-reaching impacts, and we're glad to have shared its story with you.
We want to give a special thank you to all our listeners for tuning in and supporting the History AI podcast. Your engagement and enthusiasm keep us going.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review our podcast. A 5-star review really helps us reach more people and continue to grow. Your feedback means the world to us.
And don't keep us a secret. Share this podcast with your friends, family, and anyone else who loves history. Word of mouth is incredibly powerful, and with your help, we can bring these fascinating stories to an even wider audience.
Remember, you can also suggest topics through our social media channels. We love hearing from you and exploring the topics that you're passionate about.
And hey, we've got some exciting news. Our merchandise is now available. Check out the link in the show notes to grab some History AI podcast gear. It's a great way to show your support and stay connected with the show.
Lastly, a reminder that every episode of our podcast is evergreen. This means you can listen to any episode at any time, and they'll always be relevant. Whether you're a new listener or a longtime fan, there's always something new to discover.
Thanks for joining us today, and don't forget to rate, subscribe, and share. We can't wait to bring you more incredible stories from history.
Stay curious, history buffs, and we'll see you next time on the History AI podcast.
Thanks again, and remember, history is always alive with the History AI podcast.
Until next time. Discover the dark, enchanting world of shadowed journeys, the tales of Jordan and Squishy. Follow Jordan, a seemingly innocent girl with a hidden power, and her loyal companion Squishy, who reincarnates into different animals after each battle. Venture into the ominous depths of the Whispering Woods as they face fierce creatures and uncover ancient secrets. Will Jordan succumb to the darkness within, or will she find the strength to forge a new destiny? Perfect for fans of dark fantasy and epic quests, this spellbinding tale will captivate and leave you pondering the fine line between hero and villain. Dive into Shadowed Journeys today. Available on Amazon now.